There was just something a little bit different about the town of Middleton. You just never knew what to expect. I spent the last 15 years of my life thinking about what I was going to expect when I returned back to that place after what happened. It turns out that I was not even close to the truth of what was going to happen there. It was October 30th, the last day of my time in Alexandra State Penitentiary. I was gathering the last of my things out of the cell and double-checked to make sure that I didn't leave anything behind for the next pig to call his own. I worked for mine, and they will work for theirs. I got to the booking department, turned in my state issue clothes, and finally got some real clothes on my back. The social worker was going over with me the last of the details of what to do when I got out. Yeah, you can kiss my ass too. They popped the doors and slid open the fences to the bus where I was about to bid adios to this shithole. I left a tough lunger for them to remember me by. The bus was outside of Dandridge when it stopped at a truck stop around 6 p.m. The doors hissed and it was time to get off. Keep in mind that I was only 2 towns over from Middleton. This restaurant called Dina's was one of the best grub joints in the county. I used to eat in this place just about every weekend when I was working with the railroad company. Someone in here was bound to know old Kurt Hadfield. I was what you might call a celebrity around these parts, and due to a little incident that I was involved in 1991 on Halloween night. Myself, Bobby Garrett, and Mindy Stokes were trolling around town looking for some action in the blister on the ass of the world known as Middleton. We hit Charlie's bar and got a little bit of a quenching before some biker toughs decided to show up and get touchy with Mindy. That didn't work too good as one of those big boys from the city caught a jagged edge of a broken bottle in his eye. Guess his riding days came to an end. He'll be riding in the sidecar now. He's just lucky that I didn't make a new mouth for him across his Adam's apple. Since the fun stopped there, we went over to the Falcon Nest and started part 2 of our night. By the time that we left the nest, we were in rare form. As it was growing closer to dark, you could already see the kids in costumes filling the street. They were going to start ringing on the doors asking for candy like little beggars. In this town, they were probably going to get sawdust in their bags. They were already broke-ass poor. We hopped in the car and started to drive all over. Middleton was strange in the fact that there was really only one way in and one way out of the town, which was really a peninsula. Once you covered all the bases, you either stayed or headed out. We decided to stay and let the night roll on. I also had decided that we were going to hole up in the woods. That's when I sent Bobby out to get beer. While he was gone, Mindy and I fucked like rabbits. When Bobby returned, he had a brilliant idea. Get dressed up and go out ourselves. And that's just what we did. We left the woods later and headed back into town. We used the last of the money on the beer, so somehow we were going to need money for masks. We decided to do what we normally do, break in and take them. We smashed in the window at the drugstore and took about 3 masks and some costumes, then it was off to the races. We spent most of the night scaring the kids and throwing things at the neighbors in their houses. I got 3 houses with their own pumpkins. We were about to toilet paper Judge Callahan's house. That's when I saw her. It was the little shit that blew the whistle on me and Bobby for playing with the Simpson boy. To back up for a moment, the Simpson boy was a kid that Bobby was trying to work with in a program. Bobby had an attraction to the boy and couldn't help himself. I tried to get Bobby off of him, but the kid went after me too, so I punched him. Apparently the little shit Katie Willis saw the incident and told on the both of us. We were fired from our jobs and no one in town wanted to hire us. So tonight being Halloween, a night of trick-or-treats, we agreed to treat Katie to a trick that she wouldn't forget. We were 2 streets away from Mindy's house, and her parents were gone for the week on a family matter. We decided to go there and wait for them. We could see that the chaperone that was with the kids was a lazy broad. Big fat Brenda Michaels, who had 4 kids of her own, was stopping to talk with the neighbors while the kids dispersed through the street behind her. The group came and went, and then Katie and another boy came to the door. The hallway light was off, and Mindy set the table inside the hallway so that she would have to come inside the house to get the candy. When Katie came to the door, she was alone, and Brenda was yakking away with Mrs. Jenness next door. When Mindy told her to come in, she did willingly. She had no time to react. When I snatched her, Bobby closed the door behind her. We dragged her out the back door and into the car, which we parked in the backyard. Mindy gagged her, I tied her up, and Bobby was the driver. Slowly, with no disruption, we started the car and drove away. No one saw anything. When we got to the woods, we got out and carried Katie to the bridge deep inside the park. It went over a good-sized stream and had aqueducts under the bridge. It was there that Bobby and I decided to have a talk with her. I told her of all the trouble that she caused me and Bobby while Mindy watched out for anyone. Bobby was a lot more forceful and began to slap her very hard. She trembled. He took her down to the end of the bridge and down to the side of the river. That's where it happened. We did her there. Bobby did most of it. I would have to say that he struck her at least 15 times, and I did about 10. He laid her up against the side of the aqueduct facing the wall. We washed up in the river and then made our way back to the bridge and into the car. We crept out of the park with Mindy walking about 30 yards in front for a lookout. When the coast was clear, we up and left Middleton. When we passed the state line into South Dakota, we stayed in the first motel that we could find. I was so nervous about the whole situation that I threw up 4 times on the way over. I had crossed the line, and this was the end of it. We checked in, got a shower, turned on the television, and then watched for the fallout. We knew that there was going to be a lot of it, and there was going to be a huge lookout for us, but nothing to the magnitude that we saw. By 10 p.m., the news had said that there was a search party out looking for her on the far end of town. They also had said that Brenda Michaels had a nervous breakdown since the children were in her care. At that point in time, they were holding her responsible, and she was also in custody. Alerts went up all over town for people to contact the police if they had seen her. Bobby screamed at the TV for them to try checking the aqueduct, and then he left. He should burn in hell. By 3 a.m., it was still in the news, and they had no sign of her. Bobby and Mindy fell asleep while I stayed and watched the rest of the news. I finally fell asleep around 5 a.m. I was so scared to, as I was afraid that they were going to find us. We were 47 miles from town, and there was going to be no way for them to get us that quick. This event was not planned, but for a long time events were planned. We had a protocol that we followed. No cell phones, charge cards, or anything. Everything was paid in cash, even the gas. We brought dye for our hair, suits for our clothes, and we made ourselves look as professional as we could. The next morning we all discussed what the plans were going to be as the full brunt of what we did hit Bobby and Mindy. We were going to try to get to North Dakota and then to Montana. I knew some of the farmland up there that was abandoned, and there was no one living in the farmhouse. Just as we were packing to leave around 11:30 a.m., they broke in with a news update that Katie's body had been found in the park and the river by a fisherman. A current of electricity unlike anything I have ever imagined went through me. My hair stood up and my blood went to ice water. We then threw the supplies in the car and went off to North Dakota. We kept to cities, that way we didn't enter places that someone might remember seeing us. When we hit North Dakota, it was another rest and sleep. The news then said that they had no suspects at the time, and there was no one considered. Her parents were on time and time again giving a grieving speech. If she had kept her mouth shut, it would have been different. There was talk between us if it would be better to split up, and we agreed that it was all together. We couldn't take the risk of one of us getting caught. We got some supplies and moved on our way on the highway. 4 hours later, we reached the state line of Montana. To us, there was some relief that the fuzz were so slow to figure anything out. As time went on, the frequency of the news reports decreased, and this whole thing faded into the background. That was a relief to me and the others, as once we hit the Montana line, the next thing that began to pop into our heads was starting a new life for ourselves. That would at least bring a sense of normalcy and calm to us, and I know it sounds messed up from my point of view, but hey, that's my business. Bobby was still on the kick of planning again. He lasted 3 weeks before he was thinking about killing someone. Mindy was a nervous wreck and mostly talked about her family and how they were going to be thinking about her not being around. She obsessed about it, night and day. It didn't make trying to start a new life easier for us. We got to the farmhouse and began to start working it into a home. We were only allowed to leave it at night, and we kept watches all the time. Bobby had bought some guns and ammo for the place, and we set up some devices in case of intruders. About 2 months in, something finally gave. Mindy. We learned that she was pregnant and that she folded and called her mom. What happened next was unbelievable. Apparently, to avoid the risk of detection, the Middleton police did not tell the media squat about what they had. They had tire tracks at the scene of the murder that belonged to a 1980 Oldsmobile Delta. There was only one person in the town with that car, Mindy. What they did was to get a warrant to tap the home of Mindy's parents, and when she had called, they had her. We were listed as missing too, and this was the break that they needed. We had no idea this was going on. So when she and I went into a convenience store, we got caught on tape, and there was a warrant out for us. We got pinched in a gas station in Fort City, and the jig was up. Apparently, after all the hoopla, our lawyers caught some breaks, and we were sentenced to 20 years with a chance of parole in 10 to 15 if we got good behavior. Mindy caught the least of it, Bobby the worst. She had her baby in prison, and his name was Kurt, just like me. They immediately put him into a protected foster home. When parole time rolled around for all of us, it was a slam dunk. I got out and had to check in weekly with the probation officer. Bobby was stuck the same way, and he had to wear the ankle bracelet same as me. The worst part of it wasn't that we were kept on a leash, but that we were never returning to Middleton, and that scarred us worse than anything. They had been so rocked by the events of the incident that they had decided that they were not going to allow Halloween trick-or-treating to ever happen again. No more Katies would happen. I guess I kind of felt bad for the other kids, but not that bad. The day that I had got out with the others, they had just reinstated Halloween, which was rather odd. I would have guessed that they would not have had it since we were out and returning home. The 15th anniversary of that night hung on the balance only 3 days away, and it was so full of tension that you could cut it with a knife. Rather than return immediately, we decided to meet up and plan our return accordingly. There was obviously going to be a parade of people that will object to the return of the three. That's their problem, not mine. This is a free country, and living where we want is a God-given right. Precautions were taken in the form of weapons to protect ourselves from the local yokels, but believe you me, we were going to be ready no matter what those fuckers thought. It was going to be yet another night to remember. Good evening and welcome to this edition of 10 at 5. My name is John Stapler, standing in for Ken Rader. In top news this evening, the town of Middleton has announced to the public that it is going to reinstate Halloween trick-or-treating in the town after a ban of almost 15 years. The Town Planning Commission met for a 3-hour session this afternoon and worked out the details of the decision, which they then revealed in a town hall meeting. This marks the first Halloween celebration that Middleton has had since the murder of young Katie Willis back in 1991, which resulted in a ban on the holiday in the town completely. In other news, grant writers have submitted a proposal for click. Bobby turned off the TV. Mindy was lying on the bed decked out in her skimpy underwear looking sleepy. Looks like things are going according to plan already, huh, boss? Bobby asked. Certainly does, dipshit. Did you bring the tools? Wouldn't leave home without them. Bobby laughed. Bobby sat on the bed and dropped the bag on it. He opened the top and began to take out a bunch of tools, pliers, screws, and a long metal pipe. They discussed the plans further and went over it to make sure that there were no hitches like last time. You are sure that it is going to work? He asked. I leaned into Bobby and slapped his cheek before answering him. You know that this is going to work. What the hell do you think I spent the last 15 years of my time doing? Jerking off thinking about Mindy? You better have been jerking off to me, baby. What the fuck? Mindy yelled from the bed. We follow the plan and we stick to it. Execute to the fullest. There is going to be so much confusion and distraction that they are not going to know anything until it's too late. By the time that happens, we are long gone, I stated. Bobby grinned ear from ear. You're speaking my language, bro. I know that everything is going to be fine, and we're going to tear them all apart, Bobby said. They took my life, my freedom away from me over that little whore, and it's time to pay back the favor. Fuck Halloween. What that guy in the slasher film did is nothing compared to the judgment that is going to befall them. They will remember all those slain on All Hallows Eve forever and ever, I said. I want to drink their blood and rub it all over me, a sleepy Mindy said. That's why you are so fucking sexy to me, baby, I said as I walked over and kissed her deeply. I then looked back at the bed and said, What else do you got in the bag? Bobby began pulling out shotguns, pistols, knives, and a few Halloween masks. The drive through the back roads was the best thing for their minds. There weren't too many cars in front or behind, and there was less worrying to do. Mindy was in the back seat fixing her hair, while Bobby was in the front loading the guns. Kurt looked in the rear view to make sure that no fuzz were following them. They knew that tonight was the night. Tonight was the night that everyone was entitled to a good scare. 10 minutes until we launch, you two. Everyone ready? Kurt asked. What the fuck are you talking about, Kurt? We're in Hadley, like five towns over from Middleton, Bobby replied. Baby, can we stop to get something to eat? I'm starving, Mindy asked. What the fuck have you two been doing over the ride over there? Didn't you hear anything that I said? We do this, then we celebrate over a meal. This town is going to get fucked worse than it did before. Got it? Kurt screamed. Everyone nodded affirmatively. The guns are all loaded, Kurt, Bobby said. Good. Pass them out and give them to Mindy first, Kurt said. Are you sure that I won't shoot you in the face first? Mindy said with a nasty grin. Stop fucking around, Mindy, and get ready, Kurt yelled as they took the last turn onto Reedmore Drive. This road took them straight into Middleton. As their car approached the last of the city limits of Annesburg, they saw the sign in the distance that read, Welcome to Middleton. Beyond that, Kurt saw a flashing yellow and red light. Not taking the chance that these lights belonged to the police of some sort, he pulled into the woods. When Kurt brought the car to a stop, he turned it off and Bobby asked if he could get out of the car and come with him. Kurt agreed, and they left Mindy there to finish her makeup. Bobby and Kurt put a pistol in the waistband of their pants and walked on. As they got closer to the scene, they noticed that there were signs there that stated that the road to Middleton was closed, and all travelers were to turn away and head into Annesburg. Kurt noticed that what was flashing was two sawhorse-type barricades with yellow construction lights on them, and two police cars behind them facing nose to nose, their red lights still flashing. As Kurt and Bobby approached, they yelled out to the officers to see if anyone was there. No response. They yelled several more times to see if there was any police there. No response. They even yelled into the woods in case the officers were there taking a piss. No response. Kurt then looked inside of the cruisers. Nothing. Not even cops. Kurt looked at Bobby and told him what he found, and the two of them ran back to the car to get Mindy. The three exited the vehicle into the woods. Bobby turned to Mindy and shouted at her to stay with the car. "I don't want to stay with the car, stupid. What the hell do you think I came along for? I'm coming too," Mindy shouted. "You stay here until we check things out," Bobby told her in a pointed tone. He and Kurt then pulled on their masks. They had the standard potato sacks with holes cut in the eyes. At the base of the masks were rope ties that secured the masks on their heads snugly. Kurt and Bobby looked at each other, knowing that the time was now and there was no turning back. "I'm ready, Bobby. Let's do this," Kurt stated. The confidence was never higher in his voice. Bobby and Kurt strolled up to the police cruisers, one on each side of the street. Their arms at their sides and in their hands were handguns. Bobby and Kurt had no intentions of taking prisoners or leaving a live witness. As they drew closer, Bobby squinted to try and see through the windshield. A distortion was about due to the rain that suddenly came down and the light on the outside of the cruiser. Finally, Bobby and Kurt got close enough and swung on the cruiser with pistols pointed at the front and back seats. The cruiser was empty. How could that be? Two cruisers, windows open, lights on, no policemen. Bobby found it awfully funny for something like this to happen. Both men checked the cruisers front to back, front seat to trunk. No one, no police. Bobby and Kurt did help themselves to the lovely shotguns that they found left in the cars. Riot guns with tactical add-ons. They thought it might just come in handy later on. After Bobby and Kurt had the area secured, they turned their attention to the fence that was past the cruisers. A 7-foot-high chain-link fence was not there earlier in the week. He knew that for sure. They looked at each other one last time, and with an affirmative nod, got their masks on and began scaling the fence. Bobby was the first one over the fence, and Kurt shortly after. As they landed on the other side of the fence, they expected to see some signs of life. A passing car, a bus, someone crossing the street. Truth was that the other side of the fence was much the same as the first. There were two cruisers parked nose to nose on the other side of the fence, and their red lights were flashing slowly. There were sawhorse-type road barricades up everywhere, and there was no way that anyone was going in or out of the town. Bobby mentioned to Kurt to move to the other side of the street and cover that area of town. Bobby began to move around the city on his own, covering the street as he walked, both guns drawn. This was the most peculiar thing. It was Halloween. The both of them checked all over the town on the first few streets that they came to, and yet they could find no evidence of anyone or anything to suggest that there was anyone there. As they made their way to the center of town, surely there had to be some signs of life. People buying liquor at the local market, cigarettes, toilet paper, something. Bobby and Kurt then approached the large shopping plaza. Several stores were in there. There had to be someone in there. Had to be. Bobby and Kurt crept along the outside of the wall of the giant grocery store. Bobby gave the signal and both of them whipped around and aimed into the store. What they saw now became a fright to them. No one. Not a soul in the store. Bobby couldn't believe that. In fact, some of the groceries were still on the belt. Cans were rolling around over and over again on the conveyor belts. No doors opening. No one making the last-minute trip to get something for the trick-or-treaters. Empty. As they made their way towards the center of town, they peered in at all of the house windows. No one. A few TVs were left on with horror movies playing, but no one was watching them. Kurt was looking in and saw a well-known zombie film being played and no one to watch it. He thought that perhaps they were out making their own horror tonight. Why would Middleton be so empty? The lightning from the rain made the whole town light up in an eerie purplish glow. It really freaked Kurt out. Bobby then swung over to the elementary school, where the kids would normally be for school. and as the lightning flashed, it lit up the whole room, which was empty, all of the desks with no occupants. Bobby swore that he saw something written on the boards, but just then he heard a noise. He swung around quickly and nearly pulled the trigger on a pumpkin that fell off of a windowsill due to the rain. He moved away from the pumpkin, and that's when he saw something run behind him swiftly. "Who's there?" Bobby yelled in the falling rain. More lightning strikes, but no one there. Bobby turned the other way and saw something move swiftly behind him. "Who the hell is that?" Again, no one claimed responsibility. Just stillness in the rain. Bobby looked around everywhere and saw no one or nothing. It possibly could have been stress triggering changes in his mind. Just then, Bobby heard a sound like an axe hitting a piece of wood and a crackling, sizzling of electricity. Sparks rained down, and as Bobby looked up, he saw a big silver transformer hurtling down towards the street. He jumped out of the way just in time for it to hit the street and explode into a fiery heap. Did someone intentionally make that happen? Is my mind playing tricks on me? Not sure about the outcome of either of the questions, Bobby moved on. One street over, Kurt was looking into the windows of all the houses. No one inside. A few TVs still on, but nothing else. Kurt then walked up to another house and slowly peered inside the window. The 1950s horror film that was previously on in the other house was on here too. Then suddenly, the screen went dark, and a bright orange symbol appeared on the screen with a black background. Unsure it meant anything, Kurt left. Kurt went to the other side of the street and looked in the window of the convenience store. No one. But the TV was on inside here too, and that symbol that was on the screen was here also. This time Kurt ran up the street. As he passed by house after house, he passed one that he swore he seen someone inside of. He ran to the window now as the torrential downpour made it nearly impossible for him to see what was happening inside. Not being able to see too well, with the water gushing down the window, Kurt noticed that there was a porch on the corner of the house with windows that were out of the rain. He ran to it swiftly and peered in. A man with a suit, staring at the TV, which now had the same orange and black symbol on the screen. Kurt, frustrated at what was happening, immediately slammed the butt end of his shotgun into the front door and pulled the trigger. His shotgun bucked and a blast rang out, and the man dropped to the floor. Kurt rushed in and fired again at the man's head just to be sure. Instantly, Kurt knew something was wrong. No blood, and he felt something hitting his skin that shouldn't have been. Splinters. As the man had on a white mask that looked like a doll's face, with the word God written on the forehead, Kurt lifted the mask, and he saw that it was a wooden mannequin. Mindy had heard the blast and it rocked her. Not sure what to do or if they needed help, she opted to get out of the car. She walked towards the fence of the town and peered in. Now drenched in rain herself, she looked through the chain link into the town, but could see nothing. She then turned back to the car and opened the passenger's door. Opening the glove compartment, she emptied the junk and revealed a small snub-nosed .38 pistol. Checking the cylinder, she could see that it was loaded. She left the car and made her way to the fence again. That's when she grabbed a hold of the fence and started to climb. Over the top and down to the street, she started walking along with gun in hand, held out in front of her. Mindy called out for the men, but they did not respond. She began to walk faster. She saw something zip past the corner of her eye and turned to look. It did it again on the other side. She then crossed the street and went down an alleyway where she saw the flash out of the corner of her eyes. As she got to the end, she could see that it was a dead end with no doors or windows. Turning, she saw a small figure standing a little ways in front of her. Judging from the stature, it had to be a child. It looked like it was wearing a cloak of some sort with a funny-looking mask. Then she heard the giggles. She raised the gun. "Who are you?" she yelled. No answer. The child continued to giggle. "What are you?" she yelled. No response, only giggles. Just as Mindy was about to speak again, the child produced a good-sized knife in hand and giggled more. Terrified, Mindy couldn't say a word. The child then shrieked and held the knife in front of him as he charged at her. Mindy pulled back the hammer and squeezed the trigger once. She saw instantly the child's head snap back as a red spray plumed behind him. The bullet hole above his right eye began gushing blood. Mindy remembered the tinny sound of the knife hitting the pavement. The child fell over backwards and was laying there motionless, the rain mixing the child's blood into the street. Mindy then turned to see if there was another way out of the alley just in case. She really did not want to pass by the child's body. Her eyes searched the walls and buildings for answers, but there were none. She then swallowed her pride and turned to leave the alley. When she turned, the child was gone. Bobby ran as fast as he could to where Kurt's blast came from. Up the front stairs and into the living room he ran. He saw Kurt knelt down, going through the pieces of the mannequin. "What happened, Kurt?" Bobby asked. "Something ain't right here, Bobby. This was set here. It's like they knew we were coming." "Who?" "This town, that's who. No one around, no people at home, no kids on the street, a mannequin in the living room. Better wake the fuck up, Bobby." "Have you looked outside? It's raining cats and dogs, Kurt. No one would be out in this shit trick-or-treating. If they did, they should have their head examined. I mean, what if there was a storm or a what?" "Or a what, Bobby?" Kurt cut Bobby off. "Oh shit. Mindy," Bobby said as he bolted out of the house and back into the rainstorm. "What about her?" Kurt screamed. "There was a river alongside the road that we came in on. What if the people left because there was a flood coming and our dumbasses just walked into it? We'll be washed away," Bobby said. "Are you friggin' crazy, Bobby? There was no mention of a storm or a flood on the radio," Kurt said. Bobby ran as fast as he could towards the gate that the two of them had climbed over earlier. Bobby could see that the streets were starting to fill up and the storm drains were backing up. Moments later, when he reached the gate, he stopped to get some air. Kurt caught up with him moments later. "This is dumb, Bobby. She can take care of herself," Kurt said. "I don't care what you say. We're taking that chance, Kurt." "Listen to me, Bobby," Kurt said as he reached out to touch him. Bobby immediately slapped his hands away. "No, you listen to me. I'm sick of your shit, Kurt. Always pushing me around. I ain't your bitch. I ain't no one's bitch. Your pushing ends here, right here, or you end right here," Bobby said as he raised the shotgun to Kurt's face. "Make your choice, Kurt," Bobby added. "I hate to disappoint you, boy, but this isn't the first time that I've had one of those pointed in my face," Kurt said. "But mine will be the last, motherfucker," Bobby said. Bobby could see that Kurt knew he was serious. With that, he put the gun down and headed over to the fence. As Bobby went up over the top, he looked down and noticed that the car was not there. He dropped to the other side and passed the cop cruisers with lights still blinking. Bobby looked around but did not see the car. "Did she ditch us?" he thought. Bobby then walked ahead and saw the front of a car in the ditch to the left. Bobby noticed that the water on the street was now up over his shins. The car had been swept into the ditch. Bobby screamed for Kurt, who quickly came over the fence. Bobby explained about the car and said that he believed that Mindy was swept away. They ran into the car and looked it over, calling for Mindy the whole time. Kurt entered the passenger's side of the car. "She's not here, Bobby," Kurt said. "She probably washed downstream. We need to get her," Bobby said. "I meant she left before the flood got here, stupid," Kurt said. "How do you know?" Bobby said. Because my pistol is gone from the glove box, Kurt mentioned. Mindy admitted to herself that this was a spooky place now. Nothing like the Middleton she remembered. Mindy made her way to the elementary school to get some cover from the rain. She saw some flickering inside the school and looked into the windows to get a better look. She noticed that in the front office, on all of the computers, there was a strange symbol, and it had a glow to it of some sorts. She felt like she had seen it somewhere before, and that it was familiar to her. She rattled the handle of the front door and was surprised to hear a click as the door opened. Opening it up, she went inside. She called out to see if there was anyone there. She said her name and that she was inside of the building taking shelter. No response. Mindy walked down the hallways slowly, lighting from side to side. Lightning lit up the whole building. Same as in the front office, all of the monitors in the classrooms had that black-orange symbol on them. All of the classrooms were closed and locked. She then noticed the last one was opened. She got the doorway with her gun drawn and slowly entered. The orange-black symbol on the teacher's screen gave the room an eerie glow. She noticed that there was a drawing on the blackboard that looked surprisingly like what was going on outside. It told of the intruders and what they were going to do and who they were. Mindy then felt a wash of ice water come over her when she saw her name on the board along with the other guys. Mindy began to slowly walk backwards into the shape of a being that swung swiftly and connected with the back of her head, knocking Mindy to the floor. Kurt and Bobby scaled the fence frantically and dropped to the other side. Now, to hell with the townsfolk, they just wanted Mindy back. They both called out loudly to her, muffled their voices. Over and over again, they called as they moved closer and closer towards the center of town. It seemed to the both of them that the rain was intensifying yet again, and they were not able to see more than a foot or two in front of them. Kurt whipped around again as he saw something out of the corner of his eye. Bobby did too. Then Kurt again. Then Bobby. Kurt then cried out and fell to the ground. Bobby looked at him as he fell, and Kurt clutched the back of his right leg. As the rain fell, Bobby could see the blood all over Kurt's hands. Bobby went over to put an arm around Kurt and support him. As Bobby was walking Kurt towards the gas station and out of the rain, Bobby felt a pain like a white-hot coat hanger in the middle of his shoulder blades. The pain was so severe he dropped Kurt to the ground. Bobby dropped to his knees and with his left hand reached back to his shoulder blades. As he drew his hand back, it was covered in blood also. Bobby had been stabbed. Barely able to stand on his own, Bobby continued to put Kurt's arm behind his neck and support him towards the gas station. As he got closer, Bobby looked on the reflection of the glass in the gas station window and saw someone step out and take aim. Suddenly, he felt the same pain, but this time in his lower right leg. Bobby fell again with Kurt to the wet ground. This time, Bobby rolled onto his back, and with pistol drawn, he sat up quick and drew on the shape that shot him and pulled the trigger. The pistol bucked once, and the figure clutched its chest as if to say he was shot there, but he did not go down. Another shot by Bobby. This one went high. The beam fired on Bobby, and he heard a sound like a slap in the face, and Kurt started screaming again as the bullet caught him in the side. Bobby fired again, this time aiming for the head. He dropped his pistol and fell to the ground. Bobby returned to helping Kurt and propped him up against the gas pump. Kurt motioned to Bobby, "Turn around." Bobby turned, and there were 5 beings with masks on, all strange masks. "Trick or treat," one of the masked people spoke. "What?" Bobby asked. "Trick or treat?" they asked again. "Yeah? The trick is on you, motherfuckers, and here is your treat. Bobby said as he raised the pistol and fired 2 shots into the big leader and at least 1 round in each of the others. The gun clicked empty. No one moved. No one went down. Bobby, stunned, looked up in terror at the masked people. "That was our trick. Now here is your treat," the big man said as he rushed Bobby and Kurt. When they came to, they could not move. Bobby opened his eyes. Before him was a great bonfire and a large circle of people in front of him, all wearing scary-looking masks. The circle was spread for quite a ways. There was what looked like an altar of some sort in the middle of the circle. Members of the circle stepped aside, and a man in a suit with a scary mask stepped into the circle. He was accompanied by a huge man in a tiki-like mask. It looked as if the man was holding a large hewing axe. The suited man stepped up to the altar and spoke. "Today marks the 15-year anniversary of the day in which our great holiday was banned. All because of these 3, we were no longer allowed to celebrate the most powerful of all holidays, Samhain. So tonight, we want to make sure that we are loyal to this holiday now and for forevermore. We will do this by consecrating this spot and this day as the day of Samhain. Now, you 2 boys did bad things in this town 10 to 15 years ago. It cost one of ours their lives, an innocent, a child. The fuck she was innocent," Kurt lifted his head and said. "What was that? You say she was not innocent? How? Speak!" the man yelled. "Her mouth cost me my life and my work," Kurt said. "Your actions did that, junkie. You are the worst scum of our town, and the worst that society has to offer, but not our society, no. We have ways to deal with the likes of you," the man said. "Fuck you. You let me out of this and we'll see who's what, you fucking freak," Bobby yelled at the man. "Great idea," the man said. "Undo him. Let him out and form the circle." The man in the suit ordered. Then the huge man with the tiki mask walked to Bobby and cut his restraints. Bobby shot out and made a beeline to the man in the suit, running as fast as he could at him. As Bobby bent to take him down at the waist, in one swift motion, the man stepped to the side and plunged a knife sharpener rod that he was holding discreetly in his hand through Bobby's near shoulder. Bobby screamed in agony as he fell to the wet ground. The man walked to him and twisted the rod around a little, increasing the pain before kicking Bobby in the face several times. Bobby turned over, blood leaking out of several places in his face. The man stepped on Bobby's neck and retrieved the sharpening rod. He then took Bobby by the collar of the jacket and dragged him back to the pole he was tied to. As the man stood up Bobby struggled again and reached out and grabbed the man's throat. Bobby squeezed as hard as he could, but the man broke free and landed a flurry of punches to Bobby's face before the others nearby tied him up again. "You see, Bobby, the reason you cannot win is because of who you are in the heart. Your heart is as black as pitch and the darkest coal. There is nothing redeeming within you that even warrants the word human. You are an animal, and whether you were born one or became one, I really don't care. Both of you. You murdered my daughter, our daughter, a daughter of Middleton. You are going to pay again. We did our time for society. We are free men," Kurt spoke. "Free? Free of what? You are not free of yourselves. The cesspool that you call a soul has brought you here tonight for what? Did you boys drop by just to say hello? To make peace? Say hello to the locals?" the man with the suit asked. He then continued. "You came here to kill. Oh yes, you came here for evil. You wanted to start a new chapter of terror in a town that has long had a history of its own terror, long before you 2 pathetic idiots arrived. Well, we planned this out, and we knew you were coming. We figured that reinstating Halloween was going to make you think that we moved on and that you hadn't broken us as a community. Well, I am sorry to tell you, even losing Katie didn't break us as a community. You all are going to meet this community right now as they introduce themselves to you, the man said. He then yelled out a command to the group, and the circle of people turned to their rights. One by one they produced sharp instruments, knives, sickles, daggers, bayonets. The first person walked up to Bobby and stabbed him in the leg. Bobby screamed out, and as the person pulled out the blade, it looked as if he licked it. He then moved on to Kurt and did the same thing. One by one, person after person, until Bobby and Kurt were bloody, heaping masses. As each person stabbed or cut, they chanted some obscure words. The man in the suit then came to the altar again and stared at the two of them. He began to preach again. Now that you all have met our two distinguished guests, I believe it is now time for the main attraction. It's time for you two to see what we really have in store for you all. And with that, the circle parted again, and it looked as if they were wheeling someone in on a large gurney-like object. Bobby barely was able to lift his head enough to see through all of the blood leaking into his eyes from the rain. He could see that it was Mindy. She was in a white garment of some sort, tied to the cart that they wheeled her in on. All of the people in the circle then dropped their sharp instruments and picked up sticks, which they then lit ablaze. With all of the torches lit, the circle of people was much larger than before. The man in the suit began chanting and preaching over Mindy, and then he told of its purpose. What was taken from us shall be brought back through you, the man said. As he moved towards Mindy's stomach, he put his hands over it. The circle then moved in, and there were others that put their hands out also. As there is a child within you now, so that child shall be born unto us, and we shall have our Katie again, the man said as he resumed chanting. Bobby heard it and could not believe it. It was not possible, as Mindy was only 9 weeks pregnant, not 9 months. But how could they? The man then said, "It is time." With that, he looked at the Tiki Man. The Tiki Man and a group of the people in the middle walked over and unbound Bobby and Kurt. They then produced 2 wicker baskets that were almost the same size as coffins and put them on long carts. It looked as if there were carve-outs for their necks to fit through. They opened the lids and put Bobby and Kurt in one each and locked them. The lids closed and their heads were exposed outside of the wicker caskets. The Tiki Man stood over Bobby and produced the big hewing axe. Bobby screamed out obscenities to the group as the Tiki Man raised the axe over his head. The members then placed wicker baskets under their heads and stepped away. The Tiki Man then brought the axe down with great might, and Bobby's head dropped into the basket. Blood spurting from everywhere, he then walked over to Kurt, who was screaming mad at this point. He screamed consistently until the Tiki Man raised his axe again, dropped, and lopped off his head. As the group carried the baskets to the bonfire, they threw them in. The man and the followers began chanting again, and this time Mindy's stomach began to rise. Mindy cried out in pain as the members held her down. Higher and higher her stomach rose. Mindy screamed in agony. The Tiki Man stood over Mindy now. Mindy began bleeding profusely out of her groin area, and her stomach swelled as if it was going to burst. Just then, the man in the suit took a knife and cut Mindy from her groin to her sternum. As soon as he stopped, 2 hands shot out from inside of her. What was inside of Mindy began to tear its way out. As it birthed out, it ripped Mindy apart, her internal organs falling out all over the ground. Tiki Man then dropped the axe down and cut Mindy's head off. The members looked in to see what came out of Mindy's stomach. and it was in fact Katie Willis. "Welcome home, Katie," the man in the suit told her. She smiled. For weeks later there was little mention of the 3 people missing. Bobby's parole officer finally gave up on the trail after it went as cold as ice. There was little public concern, however, after the authorities put out pictures of the missing criminals. They had then gotten a lead from a hotel in Hadley. The hotel owner remembered them asking how far it was to Middleton. The sheriff then swung by the town of Middleton and began asking around about the missing convicts. No one remembered seeing or hearing of them. The sheriff then spoke with the local pastor, a well-to-do man in a very nice suit. When asked if he had seen any of the people in the photos, he stated, "They were the ones that murdered that little girl some years ago. We don't have people like that in this town, Sheriff. Not anymore."